Picture this. It's your sweet 16, the party of your dreams, and the woman who sacrificed everything to make it happen is standing there as you publicly humiliate her in front of everyone she knows. Madison thought she was just having fun when she mocked her grandmother at her own birthday party, but she had no idea that single moment would strip away everything she'd ever known about love, family, and the devastating price of cruelty. What happened next didn't just change her life. It revealed a family secret so shocking that it would make you question everything you think you know about the people who raise us. My beautiful family and friends, welcome back. If you're ready for another unforgettable story, do me a quick favor, hit that like button. Why? Because every like tells YouTube, this story is worth sharing with more people who might really need it today. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. I do read every single one, and it makes me feel like we're sitting together in the same room, sharing these moments heart to heart. And don't forget to share this video with someone you love. You never know, the story you share might be the encouragement they've been praying for. This isn't just a channel, it's a family. And when you engage, you're helping us build a safe space where real stories bring real hope. Now, take a deep breath. Get comfortable, and let's dive into today's story. The crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across the ballroom floor as Madison Harper adjusted her tiara for the 100th time, her perfectly manicured fingers trembling with excitement. Tonight was supposed to be perfect, her sweet 16, the party she dreamed about since she was 12. The Riverside Country Club buzzed with the energy of 200 guests, all here to celebrate her transition into young adulthood. But as she stood at the top of the marble staircase in her custom-designed pink gown that cost more than most people's cars, Madison couldn't shake the hollow feeling in her chest. Something was missing from this picture-perfect moment, and she knew exactly what it was. "You look absolutely stunning, sweetheart," came a familiar voice from behind her. Madison turned to see her grandmother, Eleanor Harper, approaching with careful steps. At 73, Eleanor still carried herself with the grace of the debutante she'd once been, though the years had softened her sharp edges. She wore a simple navy dress, elegant but understated, the kind of outfit that whispered class rather than screaming for attention. "Grandma Ellie," Madison forced a smile, though her eyes flickered with something darker. "I wasn't sure you'd make it." "Make it?" Eleanor's weathered hand reached out to touch Madison's cheek gently. "Darling, I wouldn't miss this for the world. After all, After all, you what?" Madison's voice carried a sharp edge that made Eleanor pause mid-sentence. The older woman's eyes clouded with confusion, then hurt. "After all, I wanted to see my granddaughter become a beautiful young woman. That's what grandmothers do." Madison's laugh was brittle, like glass about to shatter. "Right. Of course." She turned back toward the ballroom, watching the sea of designer dresses and tailored suits below. Her parents, Richard and Sophia Harper, held court near the champagne fountain, surrounded by their social circle, the same people who'd been orbiting their family's wealth for as long as Madison could remember. "Madison, is everything all right?" Eleanor's voice was soft, concerned. "You seem different tonight." Different. That was one word for it. Madison had spent the last month listening to whispered conversations, overhearing phone calls that stopped the moment she entered a room. She'd pieced together fragments of truth that had left her feeling like she was drowning in a pool of her own privilege. "I'm fine, Grandma. Just excited to celebrate." The words tasted like ash in her mouth. Eleanor smiled, her face lighting up with genuine joy. "I'm so proud of you, Madison. 16 years ago, when you came into our lives, you brought such light. Your parents were so young when they had you, barely out of college themselves. I remember thinking. Grandma, Madison interrupted, her voice cold enough to freeze the summer air. Maybe we should go downstairs. People are waiting. The hurt that flashed across Eleanor's face was brief but devastating. Of course, dear. I just wanted to tell you how much this night means to me too. Being able to give you this party, to see you so happy, it's been worth every penny. Every penny. There it was, the reminder that Madison had been dreading all evening. She knew exactly who had paid for this extravagant celebration. It wasn't her parents, despite their country club memberships and luxury cars. It wasn't some trust fund or investment account. It was the woman standing beside her, the same woman who worked double shifts at the local diner until she was 68, who'd never owned a car that wasn't at least 10 years old, who still cut coupons and bought generic brands at the grocery store. The same woman who'd somehow managed to save enough money to give Madison everything she'd ever wanted. What would you do if you discovered that the person who sacrificed everything for your happiness was also the person you've been taught to be ashamed of? Drop a comment below. I want to hear your thoughts on family loyalty versus social status. As they descended the staircase together, Madison caught sight of her reflection in the mirrored wall. She looked like a princess, like something out of a fairy tale. But fairy tales didn't prepare you for the moment when you realized that your fairy godmother had been bleeding herself dry to make your dreams come true. And they certainly didn't prepare you for what you might do when that truth became too much to bear. The band struck up the first song of the evening, a waltz that Eleanor had specifically requested because it was the same song that had played at Madison's parents' wedding. Madison watched her grandmother's face light up with the memory, watched her eyes grow misty with sentiment and love. Something twisted in Madison's chest, part guilt, part resentment, part something else entirely that she didn't have a name for. Tonight, she was going to do something that would change everything between them forever. She just didn't know it yet. The ballroom erupted in polite applause as Madison and Eleanor reached the bottom of the staircase. Madison's smile was camera-ready, practiced from years of family photos and social events, but her eyes remained cold as winter frost. Madison. Oh my God, you look absolutely divine. Brittany Ashworth swept toward them like a hurricane in Versace, her blonde hair perfectly styled and her smile sharp enough to cut glass. Behind her trailed Madison's inner circle, the daughters of senators, tech moguls, and old money families who'd ruled the social scene for generations. This party is literally insane, gushed Chelsea Montgomery, her voice carrying the particular breathless quality that suggested she'd already found her way to the champagne. Your parents really outdid themselves this time. Madison's stomach clenched. Actually. Madison, darling. Her mother appeared as if summoned, wrapping her in a cloud of Chanel No. 5 and perfectly controlled affection. Sophia Harper was 41 but looked 35, thanks to the kind of maintenance that required regular trips to discreet clinics in Switzerland. Her smile was radiant, but Madison had learned to read the subtle signs of stress around her mother's eyes. "Mom, you remember my friends," Madison said, though she caught the way her mother's gaze flickered nervously toward Eleanor. "Of course. Girls, you all look absolutely stunning." Sophia's voice was warm honey, but Madison noticed how she positioned herself between Eleanor and the group of teenagers. "Madison, your father wants to introduce you to the Hendersons. They just flew in from the Hamptons specifically for tonight." The Hendersons? Brittany's eyes lit up with the kind of recognition that meant old money and social climbing opportunities. As in Henderson Industries. "The very same," Sophia beamed, clearly proud of the coup. "They've been family friends for years." Eleanor cleared her throat gently. Sophia, perhaps I should. Oh, Mother Harper. Sophia's voice took on that particular tone Madison had heard 1,000 times, the one that managed to be polite and dismissive simultaneously. Why don't you find yourself a comfortable seat? The evening's just getting started, and I know how tiring these events can be. The words hit Eleanor like a physical blow. Madison watched her grandmother's face transform from hopeful anticipation to quiet dignity masking deep hurt. It was a look she'd seen too many times, and tonight it made something dark and ugly writhe in her chest. Of course, Eleanor said quietly. I'll just find somewhere to sit. Actually, Madison heard herself say, her voice cutting through the group's chatter like a blade. Actually, Grandma Ellie, why don't you tell everyone how you managed to afford all this? The silence that followed was deafening. Sophia's face went pale beneath her perfectly applied makeup. Brittany and Chelsea exchanged confused glances, while Eleanor looked as though Madison had struck her across the face. Madison, Sophia hissed under her breath, what are you doing? But Madison couldn't stop. The words were pouring out of her like poison from a wound. No, really. I think it's fascinating. My grandmother worked, at Mel's Diner on Route 9. You know, the one with the cracked vinyl booths and the broken air conditioning? She served coffee and pie to truckers and factory workers for 43 years. Eleanor's face had gone ashen. Madison, please. Please what, Grandma? Madison's voice was getting louder, drawing attention from nearby clusters of guests. Please don't tell the truth. Please don't mention that while my parents were busy playing dress-up with their friends, you were working double shifts to save money for my college fund? For this party? For every single birthday present I've ever received that mattered. The crowd around them was growing larger, drawn by the spectacle. Madison could see her father pushing through the throng, his face thunderous. Richard Harper was a man who valued control above all else, and his daughter was currently destroying that control in front of 200 of their closest social connections. That's enough, he growled, reaching for Madison's arm. But Madison yanked away from him, her tiara slipping slightly askew. No, Dad, I don't think it is enough. I think everyone should know exactly who paid for this party. I think they should know that Grandma Ellie, sweet, selfless Grandma Ellie, emptied her entire retirement account so that I could have my princess moment. Eleanor was crying now, silent tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. Madison, stop. Please just stop. Why should I stop? Madison's voice cracked with emotion she couldn't quite identify. Why should I pretend anymore? Pretend that I'm not embarrassed? Pretend that I don't see the way people look at you when you show up to my school events in your Walmart clothes? Pretend that I don't cringe when you tell stories about your diner customers like they matter. The ballroom had gone completely silent. Even the band had stopped playing. 200 guests stood frozen, witnessing the destruction of a family in real time. Eleanor straightened her shoulders with whatever dignity she had left. Her voice, when she spoke, was barely above a whisper but seemed to carry across the entire room. I see. Those 2 words carried more weight than all of Madison's cruel speeches combined. They held 43 years of sacrifice, 16 years of unconditional love, and a lifetime of hoping that family meant more than social status. I see, Eleanor repeated, louder this time. She reached into her small purse with trembling hands and pulled out an envelope. Well then, I suppose there's no need for this anymore. She placed the envelope on the nearest table, Madison's gift, the one she'd been saving for the end of the evening. Then she looked at her granddaughter one last time, her eyes filled with a sadness so profound it seemed to echo through the vaulted ceiling. "I hope," Eleanor said quietly, "that your princess moment was worth it." Have you ever said something in anger that you immediately regretted? Sometimes the words we speak in our darkest moments reveal more about our own pain than the person we're trying to hurt. What do you think is really driving Madison's cruelty here? Share your thoughts below. And with that, Eleanor Harper walked through the crowd of stunned socialites, past the crystal champagne fountain and the imported orchids, past the life she'd sacrificed everything to give her granddaughter, and straight out of the ballroom. The silence that followed her exit was broken only by the soft rustle of her navy dress disappearing through the country club's ornate doors. Madison stood frozen in the center of it all, her tiara finally sliding completely off her head to shatter against the marble floor. For the first time in her 16 years, she had gotten exactly what she thought she wanted. So why did it feel like her world was ending? The aftermath of Eleanor's exit hit like a tidal wave in slow motion. Madison stood in the center of the ballroom, surrounded by 200 witnesses to her cruelty, watching the shattered pieces of her tiara sparkle on the marble floor like broken dreams. The first person to move was Mrs. Henderson, the society matriarch whose opinion could make or break social standing in their circles. She whispered something to her husband, gathered her purse, and walked toward the exit without a backward glance. The message was clear: the Harpers had just committed social suicide. "Well," Brittany said, her voice cutting through the silence with surgical precision, "that was intense." She exchanged a look with Chelsea that Madison knew all too well, the look that meant she'd just become the subject of gossip that would follow her for years. Richard Harper's face had turned an alarming shade of red. He grabbed Madison's arm with enough force to leave bruises. "Upstairs. Now. Dad, Now." The trek to the country club's private conference room felt like a death march. Madison's heels clicked against the marble with each step, the sound echoing her guilt with mechanical precision. Behind them, she could hear the low murmur of conversation resuming, her social execution being dissected in real time. Sophia was already pacing when they entered the room, her perfect composure finally cracking. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" she hissed. "Any idea at all?" Madison collapsed into a chair, suddenly feeling exhausted. "Mom, I know it looked bad, but—" "Looked bad." Richard's laugh was harsh and bitter. "Madison, you just humiliated the woman who has single-handedly funded our entire lifestyle for the past 10 years in front of everyone who matters in this city." The words hit Madison like ice water. "What do you mean, funded our lifestyle?" Sophia and Richard exchanged a look that made Madison's stomach drop. There was something there, something they'd been hiding. "Sit down, Sophia," Richard said quietly. "She needs to know." "Know what?" Madison's voice was barely above a whisper. Sophia sank into the chair across from her daughter, suddenly looking every one of her 41 years. "Madison, your grandmother. She didn't just pay for this party. She's been paying for everything. Our mortgage, your private school tuition, my car payments, your father's business loans when the company almost went under 3 years ago." The room seemed to tilt sideways. "That's impossible. You guys have money. We live in Riverside Hills. We belong to the country club. We're drowning," Richard said flatly. "Have been for years. The tech startup I invested in went belly up in 2019. We lost everything, the savings, the college funds, even the house was in foreclosure until your grandmother stepped in." Madison felt like she was falling through space. But you drive a Mercedes. Mom shops at Bergdorf's. All leased or on credit, Sophia whispered. Madison, we've been living on borrowed time and your grandmother's diner wages for 3 years. Every beautiful thing in your life, your education, your clothes, this party, even the roof over our heads, it all came from a 73-year-old woman who worked her fingers to the bone because she loved us. The weight of this revelation crashed over Madison like a tsunami. Every cruel word she'd spoken downstairs took on a new dimension of horror. Eleanor hadn't just been a generous grandmother, she'd been their family's salvation, and Madison had just burned that bridge to ash in front of 200 people. "Oh God," Madison breathed. "Oh God, what have I done?" Before either parent could answer, Richard's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his face went white. "What is it?" Sophia asked. "It's from Mom's bank. She's just transferred all the remaining funds from the account she set up for us." His voice was hollow. "She's closed it. All of it. The mortgage payments, Madison's tuition for next semester, the car loans, everything stops now." The silence in the room was deafening. Madison could hear her own heartbeat, could feel the walls of her privileged world collapsing around her like a house of cards in a hurricane. "How much time do we have?" Sophia's voice was barely audible. Richard scrolled through his phone with shaking fingers. The mortgage payment was due yesterday. She was going to cover it tomorrow. The school needs next semester's tuition by Friday or Madison gets dropped from the roster. The car payments. He looked up at his wife with something approaching panic. "Sophia, we have maybe 2 weeks before everything falls apart." Madison stood up so quickly her chair toppled backward. "I have to find her. I have to apologize, explain that I didn't mean." "Mean what?" Sophia's laugh was bitter. "That you didn't mean to publicly destroy the woman who sacrificed everything for you? That you didn't mean to announce to our entire social circle that you're ashamed of the person who kept us from being homeless?" "I was angry. I was confused. I didn't understand." "You understood enough to know it would hurt her," Richard said quietly. "Madison, your grandmother doesn't just love you. She worships you. You've been the center of her universe since the day you were born. And tonight, you took that love and used it as a weapon." Madison's legs gave out, and she sank back into the chair. The full scope of what she'd done was finally hitting her. She destroyed more than her relationship with Eleanor. She destroyed Eleanor herself, in front of everyone who mattered. "Can't we call her? Go to her house? I'll grovel, I'll do anything." "She's not answering her phone," Richard said, showing Madison his screen full of unanswered calls. "And honestly, I don't blame her." As if summoned by their desperation, there was a knock on the conference room door. A country club employee entered, holding a familiar envelope, the one Eleanor had placed on the table before walking out. "The elderly lady asked me to make sure Miss Harper received this," the young man said awkwardly before retreating. Madison's hands shook as she opened the envelope. Inside was a cashier's check for $50,000, Eleanor's remaining life savings, and a single sheet of paper with Eleanor's careful handwriting. "My dearest Madison, this was going to be your graduation gift, enough for your first year at whatever college you choose, so you wouldn't have to worry about student loans like your parents did. I want you to know that every shift I worked, every penny I saved, every sacrifice I made was worth it because I thought I was giving you opportunities to become the incredible woman I know you can be. I love you more than my own life, but I cannot continue to enable behavior that turns love into cruelty and generosity into shame. Use this money wisely. It's the last gift I'll ever be able to give you. All my love, always, Grandma Ellie. P.S. I won't be coming to your graduation. I think we both know why. Madison read the letter 3 times before the full impact hit her. Eleanor hadn't just withdrawn financial support, she'd withdrawn from Madison's life entirely. The woman who'd never missed a school play, a birthday, or a holiday was walking away forever. And Madison had no one to blame but herself. 3 days after the party, Madison's world began to unravel with surgical precision. The first blow came Monday morning when she arrived at Riverside Academy to find her parking spot occupied by someone else's car. Confused, she drove to the visitors section and made her way to the administrative office, where Mrs. Chun, the registrar, looked at her with barely concealed pity. "Miss Harper, we need to discuss your enrollment status," Mrs. Chun said gently, gesturing toward a chair that Madison suddenly didn't want to sit in. "The payment for your final semester was due Friday. As of this morning, your account shows a balance of negative $18,000. Madison's mouth went dry. There must be some mistake. "My parents." "Your parents have been contacted multiple times over the weekend. I'm sorry, Madison, but unless payment is received by Wednesday, you'll be withdrawn from all classes. You won't be able to graduate with your class in May." The hallway outside the office felt like a funhouse mirror as Madison stumbled toward her locker. Students she'd known for years avoided eye contact, their conversation stopping abruptly when she passed. Word had spread fast. In their insular social circle, Madison's public humiliation of Eleanor had become the scandal of the season. "Madison, wait up." She turned to see Trevor Castellanos jogging toward her, his face etched with concern. Trevor had been her closest friend since middle school, and more recently, something that felt like it might become more than friendship. His family owned a chain of luxury hotels, but unlike most of their peers, Trevor had always seemed genuinely kind. "I heard about the tuition thing," he said quietly when he reached her. "That's rough. Is there anything I can do?" For a moment, Madison wanted to collapse into his arms and tell him everything. About the foreclosure notices that had started arriving in Saturday's mail, about her mother crying behind closed bathroom doors, about how her father had started drinking before noon. But the weight of her shame was too heavy. "I'm fine," she lied. "It's just a billing error. It'll be sorted out by tomorrow." Trevor's dark eyes searched her face. "Madison, you know you can talk to me, right? About anything." Before she could answer, Brittany's voice cut through the moment like a knife. "Madison, there you are. We need to talk." Trevor glanced between them, clearly sensing the tension. "I'll catch up with you later," he said, squeezing Madison's hand briefly before walking away. Brittany waited until he was out of earshot before moving closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Okay, so everyone's talking about Saturday night. And I mean everyone. What are they saying?" Madison asked, though part of her didn't want to know. Well, Brittany's eyes gleamed with a particular cruelty that teenage girls perfected. "Chelsea's mom was at the party, and she told Chelsea that your grandmother was literally crying when she left. Like, sobbing. And apparently, she heard your parents talking about money problems." Madison's stomach clenched. "Brittany, that's not. Look, I'm your friend, so I'm going to be honest with you. People are saying that your family's been basically poor this whole time and your grandmother was like, paying for everything? And that you totally humiliated her because you were embarrassed about being, well, you know, not actually rich." Each word felt like a physical blow. Madison could see her social standing crumbling in real time, could feel the careful facade her family had built over 3 years disintegrating. "That's not true," Madison said, but even she could hear how weak her voice sounded. Brittany's smile was sharp as broken glass. "Madison, honey, I want to help you. But you have to understand, my parents are asking questions about whether our families should still be, associated, after what happened." The message was clear. Madison was being cut from the social circle that had defined her entire identity. She was being exiled from the only world she'd ever known. "I have to go," Madison muttered, turning toward the parking lot. "Madison, wait." Brittany called after her. "Look, if you need anything, a loan or help with the tuition thing, my dad might be willing to work something out. For old time's sake." Madison stopped walking. There was something in Brittany's tone that made her skin crawl. "What kind of arrangement?" "Well," Brittany's voice took on a sickly sweet quality, "you could probably work it off somehow. My dad's always looking for help at his restaurants. I'm sure he could find something for you to do. Waiting tables, maybe? You'd be good at that. It probably runs in the family." The cruelty of it hit Madison like a slap. Brittany was offering her the same kind of work that Eleanor had done for 43 years, the work that Madison had publicly mocked and been ashamed of. It was poetic justice with a vicious twist. "No thank you," Madison said quietly. "Your choice," Brittany shrugged. "But Madison? Pride doesn't pay tuition bills." The drive home felt endless. Madison's hands shook on the steering wheel as she navigated the familiar streets of Riverside Hills, seeing them with new eyes. Every manicured lawn, every luxury car in every driveway, every symbol of the wealth she'd taken for granted now felt like evidence of her family's deception. When she pulled into their driveway, she was surprised to see her father's car already there. Richard never came home before 6, but it was barely noon. She found her parents in the kitchen, sitting across from each other at the breakfast bar with a stack of papers between them. Sophia's eyes were red and puffy, while Richard looked like he'd aged 10 years in 3 days. "Madison," Richard said when she entered, "we need to talk." Madison set her purse down carefully. "Let me guess. More bad news." "I lost my job," Richard said flatly. "They called it restructuring, but we all know it's because of Saturday night. Word travels fast in business circles, especially when it involves publicly humiliating elderly family members." The kitchen seemed to spin around Madison. "Dad, I'm so sorry. I didn't know." "There's more," Sophia interrupted. "The mortgage company called. We have exactly 14 days to bring the account current or they start foreclosure proceedings. The car dealership wants both vehicles back by the end of the week unless we can make the back payments." Madison sank into a chair, feeling the weight of consequence crushing down on her. "How much do we need?" $47,000. Richard said quietly. "That's just to buy us another month." The number hung in the air like a death sentence. Madison thought about Eleanor's final gift, the $50,000 that sat in her bedroom, untouched since Saturday night. It would almost cover their immediate needs, but using it felt like the final betrayal of her grandmother's trust. "I tried calling Mom again," Richard continued. "Went to her apartment building, but the super says she checked out yesterday. Paid through the end of the month and left. He doesn't know where she went." Eleanor was gone. Not just angry or hurt, actually gone, disappeared from their lives as completely as if she'd never existed. The reality of it hit Madison like a physical blow. "I have her money," Madison whispered. "The graduation gift. $50,000. Sophia's head snapped up. "Madison, we can't take that money." Not after what happened. Why not? The words came out harsher than Madison intended. She gave it to me. She said to use it wisely. Keeping our family from being homeless seems pretty wise. That money was meant for your education, Richard said firmly. Your grandmother worked 43 years to save that money for your future, not to clean up our mistakes. Our mistakes. Madison's voice rose. Dad, you're the one who invested in a tech startup without telling anyone. You're the one who leveraged everything we had. And Mom, you're the one who kept spending money we didn't have on clothes and cars and memberships. I didn't make those choices. The silence that followed was deafening. For the first time in 3 days, Madison felt a flicker of her old fire, her old certainty. Maybe she'd been cruel to Eleanor, but she wasn't responsible for her parents' financial disasters. You're right, Sophia said quietly. You're absolutely right. We made these choices. We put Eleanor in the position of having to save us, and we let you believe we were something we weren't. Richard nodded slowly. Madison, your mother and I, we've been living a lie for so long that we forgot what the truth looked like. We turned your grandmother into our personal ATM and then acted ashamed of her when it was convenient. Madison looked at her parents, really looked at them, for the first time in years. Without their designer clothes and country club confidence, they looked small and frightened and human. They looked like people who'd made terrible choices and were finally facing the consequences. So what do we do now? Madison asked. We figure it out, Richard said. Without your grandmother's money. We get jobs, real jobs. We sell everything we can sell. We move to a smaller place. We live like the people we actually are instead of the people we pretended to be. And Eleanor? Madison's voice broke on her grandmother's name. Sophia wiped her eyes with a tissue that was already shredded from use. I don't know, honey. I really don't know if she'll ever forgive us. Any of us. When pride and social pressure collide with family loyalty, which one wins? Madison's learning that some bridges, once burned, might never be rebuilt. But do you think Eleanor's disappearance is permanent, or is there something deeper happening here? Let me know what you think in the comments. As if summoned by their conversation, the doorbell rang. Madison's heart leaped. Maybe Eleanor had come back. Maybe there was still time to fix things. But when Richard opened the door, it wasn't Eleanor standing on their porch. It was Trevor, holding a manila envelope and wearing an expression Madison had never seen before. Madison, he said, his voice strangely formal. I think there's something you need to know about your grandmother. Madison felt her knees go weak as Trevor stepped into their foyer, the manila envelope in his hands seeming to pulse with ominous energy. His usual warm smile was nowhere to be found, replaced by something that looked almost like pity mixed with disbelief. Trevor, what's going on? Madison asked, though part of her already knew she didn't want to hear the answer. Maybe we should sit down for this, Trevor said quietly, glancing at her parents who had gathered in the doorway. They moved to the living room, the same living room that would probably be repossessed within the month. Trevor remained standing while the Harper family arranged themselves on the white leather sofa like defendants awaiting a verdict. My dad's on the hospital board at St. Mary's, Trevor began, his voice careful and measured. He was reviewing some patient files today for charity care applications when he recognized a name. Eleanor Harper. Madison's blood turned to ice water in her veins. Is she okay? Is she hurt? She's been receiving cancer treatments there for the past 8 months, Trevor said gently. Stage 3 pancreatic cancer. The doctors, they don't think she has very long. The words hit the room like a bomb blast. Sophia gasped, covering her mouth with both hands, while Richard went completely white. But Madison felt something inside her shatter so completely that she couldn't even process the pain yet. 8 months, Richard whispered. She's been sick for 8 months and never said a word. Trevor nodded grimly. It gets worse. My dad looked into her financial records. The hospital requires them for the charity care program. Eleanor wasn't working at the diner because she needed the money. Madison's confused brain struggled to process this information. What do you mean? I mean she owned the diner. Has for 12 years. She also owns 4 other properties around town, including the apartment building she was living in. Trevor's voice was quiet, but every word landed like a physical blow. Madison, your grandmother is worth about $2.3 million. The silence that followed was so complete that Madison could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. Nothing made sense. Nothing added up. That's impossible, Sophia breathed. She worked there. We saw her working. She wore those uniforms. She talked about difficult customers. She worked there because she wanted to, Trevor said. According to the records, she bought the diner when the previous owner was going to close it down and lay off 23 employees. She kept working shifts because she liked the people, liked feeling useful. The modest apartment, the second-hand clothes, the grocery store coupons, it was all by choice. Madison's world tilted sideways. But why? Why would she pretend to be poor? Why would she let us think she was sacrificing everything for us? Trevor opened the manila envelope and pulled out several documents. She wasn't pretending to be poor. She was trying to teach you the value of money and hard work. Look at this. He handed Madison a letter, not addressed to her, but to the hospital's social worker. It was in Eleanor's careful handwriting, dated 6 months earlier. Dear Mrs. Rodriguez, I'm writing to explain my financial situation for my treatment plan. While I do have substantial assets, I want to be clear about my intentions. I've been supporting my son's family for 3 years because they made some poor financial decisions and were too proud to ask for help directly. I love them, but I've realized that my support may have enabled them to avoid learning important lessons about responsibility and humility. My granddaughter Madison is brilliant and capable, but she's been raised with advantages that have made her somewhat callous to people she perceives as beneath her social status. I've been hoping that by staying in my working-class job and modest lifestyle, I could show her that dignity and worth aren't determined by wealth or status. The cancer diagnosis has forced me to reconsider this approach. I may not have time to teach these lessons gradually. I'm considering revealing the truth about our family's actual financial situation, but I'm afraid it might do more harm than good. I just want Madison to understand that the most important things in life, love, integrity, compassion, can't be bought. I'm worried that if she continues on her current path, she'll become someone I won't recognize. Please keep this information confidential. I'm still deciding how to handle the situation with my family. Sincerely, Eleanor Harper. Madison read the letter twice before it fully sank in. Eleanor hadn't been sacrificing her life savings. She'd been sacrificing her pride, her comfort, and her remaining time on Earth to try to teach Madison lessons about character and humility. And Madison had thanked her by publicly humiliating her in front of 200 people. There's more, Trevor said quietly. He pulled out another document, a will, dated just 2 weeks ago. She changed this after your party. Richard took the papers with shaking hands and began to read aloud. I, Eleanor Margaret Harper, being of sound mind and body, do hereby leave my entire estate to the Riverside Children's Hospital, with the exception of a trust fund established for my granddaughter Madison Harper's education, to be administered by the hospital's board until she reaches the age of 25 and can demonstrate that she has learned the value of compassion and service to others. Madison felt like she was drowning. She left everything to charity? Everything except your education fund, Trevor confirmed. But here's the thing, there are conditions. You have to complete 4 years of community service, working with underprivileged populations. You have to maintain a 3.5 GPA in college while working a part-time job. And you have to write a letter of apology that she deems acceptable, demonstrating that you truly understand the harm you caused. But she's our grandmother, Sophia said weakly. She can't just cut us out of her will. Trevor's expression grew even more grave. Actually, that brings me to the final piece of information. He pulled out one last document. This one looked older, more official. Mrs. Harper, Mr. Harper. Eleanor isn't Madison's biological grandmother. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Madison felt the last pieces of her world crumble away completely. What? She whispered. Madison, your biological grandmother died when you were 3. Eleanor was her best friend. They worked together at a textile factory for 20 years before Eleanor inherited some money and bought the diner. When your real grandmother passed away, Eleanor stepped in to help your family. She legally adopted the role of grandmother, but she had no biological obligation to any of you. Richard's face had gone gray. That's not. We never told Madison because we didn't want her to feel confused about family relationships. Eleanor was always just there. She loved Madison like her own grandchild from the beginning. So everything she did, Madison's voice was barely above a whisper, every sacrifice, every dollar, every moment of her life she gave to us, she did it by choice. Because she loved us. Not because she had to. And you publicly rejected that love, Trevor said quietly. You told a room full of people that you were embarrassed by the woman who chose to be your family when she didn't have to be. Madison stood up abruptly, her legs unsteady. The weight of what she'd done, what she'd really done, was crushing her from the inside out. She destroyed a woman who had chosen to love her, who had given up years of her life to raise a child who wasn't even her own grandchild, who had worked jobs she didn't need and lived modestly she didn't have to live just to try to teach Madison important lessons about life. And now Eleanor was dying alone, believing that the child she'd sacrificed everything for was ashamed of her. I have to find her, Madison said, her voice stronger than it had been in days. I have to tell her I'm sorry. I have to explain. Madison, Trevor interrupted gently. She checked herself into hospice care yesterday. She's not accepting visitors. The room began to spin. Madison grabbed the arm of the sofa to keep from falling. Hospice care? But you said she had time. The stress of what happened at your party accelerated her condition. Her doctor says the emotional trauma caused her to stop responding to treatment. She's dying, Madison. And she doesn't want to see any of you. Sometimes the people who love us most are the ones we take for granted until it's too late. Eleanor chose Madison's family when she had no obligation to do so, and Madison chose cruelty when love was offered freely. Do you think there's any way back from betrayal this deep? Share your thoughts, because what happens next will determine everything. Madison sank to her knees on the living room floor, finally understanding the true magnitude of what she'd lost. She hadn't just hurt someone who loved her. She destroyed someone who had chosen to love her when no one else would have blamed them for walking away. And now the woman who had been more of a mother to her than anyone else in the world was dying alone, believing that Madison was ashamed of her. The worst part? Eleanor was right to believe it. Because Madison had been ashamed. Even knowing what she knew now, even understanding the depth of Eleanor's sacrifice, part of her was still that 16-year-old girl who cared more about what Brittany Ashworth thought than about the woman who had given up her entire life for Madison's happiness. For the first time since Saturday night, Madison began to cry, not pretty, silent tears, but ugly, gut-wrenching sobs that came from a place deeper than regret. They came from the terrible understanding that some mistakes can't be fixed, some words can't be taken back, and some love, once rejected, might never be offered again. Eleanor was dying, and Madison had killed her chance at redemption along with the woman who had loved her most. The next morning, Madison sat in the parking lot of St. Mary's Hospice Center, gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles had turned white. She'd been there for 3 hours, working up the courage to walk through the glass doors that separated her from Eleanor. 3 hours of watching families come and go, of seeing people emerge with tear-stained faces and hollow eyes, of knowing that somewhere inside that building, the woman who had loved her most was dying alone. Finally, Madison forced herself out of the car and walked to the reception desk on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else. "I'm here to see Eleanor Harper," she said to the woman behind the counter, a kind-faced nurse whose name tag read Patricia. Patricia's expression immediately grew sympathetic but firm. "I'm sorry, dear. Mrs. Harper has specifically requested no visitors from family members. She's made it very clear that she needs this time to find peace." "Please," Madison's voice cracked. "I'm her granddaughter. I need to tell her I'm sorry. I need her to know that I understand now that I—" "Honey," Patricia interrupted gently, "I've been doing this job for 15 years. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do for someone we love is respect their wishes, even when it breaks our hearts." Madison felt something inside her crumble. Is she in pain? "We're keeping her as comfortable as possible. She's been writing a lot letters, it looks like. And she asked us to plant some flowers in the garden outside her window. Daisies. Said they reminded her of someone she used to know." Daisies. Eleanor's pet name for Madison when she was little had been Daisy, because of the way she used to pick the flowers in Eleanor's small garden and present them like precious gifts. The memory hit Madison like a physical blow. "How long does she have?" Madison whispered. Patricia's expression grew even more compassionate. "The doctors think maybe a week. Possibly less. I'm sorry." Madison stumbled out of the hospice center and sat on a bench in the parking lot, staring at the building that contained the last days of Eleanor's life. The woman inside those walls, the woman who was choosing to die alone rather than see the family she'd given everything for, was slipping away, and there was nothing Madison could do to stop it. Her phone buzzed with a text from Trevor. "Heard you went to the hospice. How did it go?" Madison stared at the message for a long time before typing back, "She won't see me." "I don't blame her. Want to talk? I'm worried about you." "I'm fine," Madison lied, then turned off her phone. The drive home felt endless, but when she finally pulled into the driveway, she found her parents loading boxes into Richard's car. The reality of their situation hit her again. While she'd been focused on Eleanor, her family's life had continued its downward spiral. "What's all this?" Madison asked, though she already knew. "We're moving in with your Aunt Sarah," Sophia said without looking at her daughter. "She's letting us use her guest room until we figure something out. The bank called this morning, We have 48 hours before they change the locks." Madison looked at the house she'd grown up in, the perfect suburban facade that had hidden so many lies. Tomorrow, strangers would live here, and all evidence of the Harper family's false prosperity would be erased. "What about my things? My room?" "Take what you can fit in one suitcase," Richard said flatly. "Everything else gets left behind." Madison climbed the stairs to her bedroom one last time. Her walk-in closet, filled with designer clothes that had been purchased with Eleanor's money. Her vanity table, covered with expensive makeup and jewelry that had been gifts from the woman she'd publicly humiliated. Her bookshelf, lined with first editions and classics that Eleanor had bought because she believed education was the most important gift she could give. Everything in this room, everything in her entire life, had been touched by Eleanor's love and sacrifice. And Madison had thrown it all away for the approval of people like Brittany Ashworth. As she packed her single suitcase, Madison found herself holding Eleanor's final letter again, rereading it obsessively as if the words might somehow change or reveal a hidden path to redemption. But each reading only made the betrayal feel deeper, the loss more permanent. Her phone, which she'd turned back on out of habit, buzzed with a call from an unknown number. Madison almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Madison Harper. The voice was professional, female. "Yes. This is Janet Rodriguez from St. Mary's Hospital. I'm the social worker who's been working with your grandmother. She asked me to call you." Madison's heart stopped. "Is she?" "She's still with us, but her condition has worsened significantly. She wanted me to give you a message." There was a pause, the sound of papers shuffling. "She said to tell you that she forgives you, but that forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. She wants you to understand that love without boundaries isn't really love at all." Madison sank onto her bed, clutching the phone. Can I talk to her? Please." "She's not conscious very much anymore. The medications keep her comfortable, but she drifts in and out. However," Janet's voice softened slightly, "she did ask me to tell you that she left something for you at the diner. Said you'd know where to find it." After Janet hung up, Madison stared at her phone for a long moment. Eleanor had left her something at Mel's Diner, the place where everything had started, where Eleanor had worked shifts she didn't need to work to teach lessons that Madison had been too selfish to learn. 20 minutes later, Madison stood in front of the small restaurant on Route 9. She'd driven past it countless times over the years, but had never actually been inside. The shame of that fact hit her now. She'd spent 16 years being supported by this place, by the woman who'd worked here, and she'd never once bothered to see where Eleanor spent her days. The interior was exactly what Madison had imagined. Cracked vinyl booths, a black and white checkerboard floor, and the kind of worn comfort that spoke of thousands of meals served to working people who needed good food at reasonable prices. It was clean and honest and completely unpretentious. Everything that Madison wasn't. "You're Madison," said a voice behind her. Madison turned to see a woman in her 50s, wearing a diner uniform and an expression that was equal parts curiosity and judgment. Her name tag read Carol. "Yes. I'm looking for something my grandmother left for me." Carol's expression hardened slightly. "So you're the granddaughter." The way she said it made Madison's cheeks burn. Word of what had happened at the party had clearly reached Eleanor's work family, the people who had seen Eleanor every day, who had known her as she really was. "She told us what happened," Carol continued. "Broke her heart, you know. Eleanor was so proud of you. Always talking about how smart you were, how beautiful, how you were going to change the world. Carol's voice carried a sharp edge of disappointed anger. Never mentioned that you were ashamed of her. Madison felt tears starting again. I wasn't. I didn't mean to. It's complicated. No, honey, it's not complicated at all. Eleanor worked here for 12 years after she bought this place. Could have retired rich, could have lived anywhere she wanted. But she stayed because she cared about people. She stayed because she believed that work has dignity, that taking care of folks matters, that community matters. Carol walked behind the counter and pulled out a manila envelope from under the register. She came in Tuesday morning, day after your little party. Hadn't seen her look that broken since her husband died. She sat right there in booth 4 for 3 hours, writing you this letter. Made me promise to give it to you if you came looking. Madison took the envelope with shaking hands. Her name was written across the front in Eleanor's careful script, but the handwriting looked shakier than usual, older somehow. She really loved you, you know, Carol said, her voice softer now. Even after what you did to her. She kept saying you were just confused, that you'd figure it out eventually. But I think maybe she ran out of time to wait for eventually. Madison clutched the letter to her chest. Do you know how she is? Dying, Carol said simply. And doing it alone because the people she loved most made her feel like loving them was something to be ashamed of. The words hit like physical blows. Madison stumbled toward the door, Eleanor's final letter burning in her hands like evidence of all her failures. Outside, she sat in her car in the diner parking lot and opened the envelope with fingers that wouldn't stop shaking. My dearest Madison, if you're reading this, it means you came looking for me after I was gone. That gives me hope that maybe I did reach you after all, even if it was too late for us. I want you to know that I never regretted loving you. Not for a single moment. From the day you came into my life as a scared 3-year-old who had just lost her grandmother, you were the light of my world. I chose to be your family, and I would choose it again every day for the rest of my life. But love isn't just about giving someone everything they want. Real love sometimes means letting someone face the consequences of their choices, even when it breaks your heart to watch. You hurt me deeply on Saturday night, but the thing that hurt most wasn't the words you said about me. It was seeing who you've become, someone who values appearance over substance, status over kindness, comfort over character. I failed you as much as you failed me, because I gave you everything except the chance to learn who you really are when no one is watching. I'm dying, sweetheart. The cancer is winning, and I don't have much time left. I could spend these last days angry at you, but I choose to spend them hoping that someday you'll understand what I was trying to teach you. The most important things in life can't be bought. Love, integrity, compassion, the ability to see the worth in every person you meet. These are the things that make a life meaningful. I pray that you'll learn this before it's too late for you to build the kind of life that will make you proud when you're old like me. I love you always, no matter what. But I won't enable you to stay the person you've become. Find your way back to the girl who used to pick daisies for me just because she thought they were beautiful. She's still in there somewhere. All my love, forever and always, Grandma Ellie. P.S. The education fund is still yours, but only if you earn it. Learn to serve others before you serve yourself. Learn that every person you meet has value. Learn that love is a choice, not an obligation. Make me proud. Madison read the letter 3 times before the full weight of it settled on her soul. Eleanor was offering her one final chance at redemption, but it came with conditions that would require Madison to become someone entirely different from who she'd been. The girl who had publicly mocked a dying woman would have to transform into someone worthy of that woman's sacrifice. The teenager who had valued social status above everything would have to learn that serving others was more important than being served. Sometimes rock bottom isn't a place you fall to, it's a place you choose to stay. Madison has lost everything: her grandmother's love, her family's security, her social standing, and most devastatingly, time. Eleanor is dying alone, believing Madison cares more about appearances than love. But is this truly the end, or could this devastating loss be the beginning of who Madison is meant to become? Tell me in the comments, when everything you thought mattered is stripped away, what's left? As Madison sat in the diner parking lot, holding Eleanor's final words, she realized that she had a choice to make. She could spend the rest of her life as the girl who had broken a dying woman's heart, or she could find a way to become the person Eleanor had always believed she could be. But with Eleanor unconscious in hospice care and possibly only days left to live, Madison wasn't sure if redemption was even possible anymore. Some bridges, once burned, could never be rebuilt. And some chances, once lost, never came again. Madison sat in that diner parking lot for 2 hours, reading Eleanor's letter over and over until the words were burned into her memory. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the cracked asphalt, something inside her shifted, like a lock finally clicking open after years of being jammed. She wasn't going to get Eleanor back. She probably wasn't going to get forgiveness or reconciliation or any of the things she desperately wanted. But maybe, just maybe, she could still become the person Eleanor had believed she could be. Madison walked back into the diner, where Carol was wiping down tables in preparation for closing. "We're closed, honey," Carol said without looking up. "I want to work here," Madison said quietly. Carol stopped wiping and looked at her sharply. "Excuse me. I want to work here. At the diner. I know I don't deserve it. I know you probably think I'm just some spoiled rich girl playing dress-up, but—" Madison's voice grew stronger. Eleanor believed work has dignity. She believed taking care of people matters. I want to learn what she was trying to teach me. Carol set down her dish rag and studied Madison's face for a long moment. "You got any restaurant experience?" "No." "You ever worked a job in your life?" "No." "You realize this is hard work? Long hours on your feet, dealing with difficult customers, minimum wage plus tips that might not amount to much." Madison thought about her designer clothes hanging in the closet she'd never see again, about the country club membership that would be canceled by week's end, about Brittany's cruel offer to let her work in her father's restaurants as charity. "I realize that," Madison said. "And I want to do it anyway." Carol was quiet for so long that Madison thought she might refuse. Finally, she sighed and pulled out a chair at the counter. "Sit down, girl. Let me tell you about your grandmother." Madison sat, her heart pounding. Eleanor bought this place 12 years ago when old Mel was going to close it down. 23 people were going to lose their jobs: single mothers, older folks who couldn't get hired anywhere else, people like me who'd been working here so long we didn't know how to do anything else. Carol poured herself a cup of coffee from the pot that had been sitting all day. She could have fired us all, brought in new people, modernized everything. Instead, she kept every single employee and gave us all raises. She worked alongside us, learned everyone's story, remembered our kids' names and our birthdays. Madison listened, trying to reconcile this version of Eleanor with the woman she'd mocked on Saturday night. She'd come in on Thanksgiving and Christmas, not because she had to, but because she knew some of the regulars didn't have anywhere else to go. She'd cook dinner for them, refuse to take payment, Tell them they were family. Carol looked directly at Madison. That woman gave more love to strangers than most people give to their own blood. And you stood up at your fancy party and acted like caring about working people was something to be ashamed of. Each word hit Madison like a hammer blow, but she didn't look away. She deserved every ounce of Carol's anger. So why should I give you a job? Carol asked. What makes you think you can walk in here and suddenly understand what Eleanor spent 12 years building? Madison was quiet for a moment, thinking about Eleanor's letter, about the conditions for her education fund, about the person she'd been versus the person she needed to become. Because I think learning to serve other people might be the only way I can honor what she tried to give me, Madison said finally. I think working here, really working here, might teach me what she was trying to show me about dignity and worth and what actually matters. Carol studied her for another long moment. You start tomorrow at 5 a.m. You'll work the breakfast shift, that's 6 hours on your feet, dealing with truckers and construction workers and people who've been awake all night. You'll clean bathrooms, mop floors, serve coffee, and smile at people even when they're rude to you. Madison's heart leaped. You'll hire me? I'll give you a chance. One chance. You show up late, you complain about the work, you act like you're better than anyone who walks through that door, and you're gone. Understood. Understood. And Madison? Carol's voice softened slightly. Eleanor would have wanted this. She believed everyone deserves a chance to become better than they were yesterday. That night, Madison lay on the air mattress in her Aunt Sarah's spare room, staring at the ceiling and thinking about what tomorrow would bring. Her parents were asleep on the pull-out couch in the living room, 3 people crammed into a space meant for guests, surrounded by the few belongings they'd been able to salvage from their former life. At 4:30 a.m., Madison's alarm went off. She dressed in the plain clothes she'd bought at Walmart the night before, jeans and a simple t-shirt, the kind of outfit she'd once considered beneath her notice. As she tied her hair back and looked at herself in the bathroom mirror, she barely recognized the girl staring back at her. The diner was already bustling when she arrived. Carol handed her an apron and a name tag, then began what felt like the most intense training session of Madison's life. Table 6 needs coffee refills. Table 2 is ready to order. That man at the counter has been coming here for 8 years. His name is Frank, he drives truck, and he likes his eggs over easy with wheat toast, no butter. Remember that. For the next 6 hours, Madison poured coffee, took orders, cleared tables, and learned that every single customer had a story. Frank the truck driver was supporting his elderly mother in a nursing home. Sarah at table 4 worked 2 jobs to put her daughter through community college. The construction crew at the corner booth had been rebuilding houses damaged in last year's tornado. These were the people Eleanor had served for 12 years. These were the people whose lives she'd touched, whose stories she'd remembered, whose dignity she'd honored with her attention and care. By the end of her shift, Madison's feet ached, her back hurt, and she'd made approximately $30 in tips. But something else had happened too, something she hadn't expected. She'd felt useful. For the first time in her 16 years, she'd spent 6 hours making other people's days a little better, serving them food and coffee and conversation, being part of something larger than her own wants and needs. Not bad for your first day, Carol said as Madison untied her apron. Frank asked me if you were new. Said you seemed different from most young people. Madison felt a tiny glow of pride, not the empty pride of social status, but the satisfaction of work well done. Carol, Madison said as she prepared to leave, do you think, would it be possible for me to visit Eleanor? Just to sit with her? I wouldn't try to wake her up or anything. I think she shouldn't be alone." Carol's expression softened. "Honey, she specifically said no family visitors." "I know. But maybe I'm not family anymore. Maybe I'm just someone who works at her diner, someone who's trying to understand what she was teaching." After a long pause, Carol reached for the phone. "Let me call Patricia at the hospice." No promises. 10 minutes later, Carol hung up and looked at Madison with something that might have been approval. "Patricia says Eleanor's been asking about daisies again. Keeps talking about someone who used to bring her flowers. She thinks maybe Eleanor needs to see that the person she was trying to reach is still there, somewhere underneath all the mistakes." Madison's hands started shaking. "She'll let me visit?" One visit. 15 minutes. And Madison. Carol's voice grew serious. "Don't go there expecting forgiveness or some deathbed reconciliation. Go there to give her something, not to get something from her." As Madison drove towards St. Mary's Hospice Center, she stopped at a small flower shop and bought a single bouquet of white daisies, the same kind she used to pick from Eleanor's garden when she was little, back when love was simple and uncomplicated and she hadn't yet learned to be ashamed of the people who cared about her most. Every journey toward redemption begins with a single step in the right direction. Madison is finally learning what Eleanor tried to teach her, that serving others isn't beneath her dignity, it's the source of it. But will this lesson come too late? What do you think Eleanor needs to hear most in what might be their final conversation? Share your thoughts below. Standing outside Eleanor's hospice room, holding a bouquet of daisies and wearing the simple clothes of working people, Madison finally understood what Eleanor had been trying to show her all along. Love wasn't about what you could get from someone. It was about what you could give. And for the first time in her life, Madison had something real to offer. Madison stood outside Eleanor's hospice room door, clutching the daisies so tightly that the stems were beginning to bend. Through the small window, she could see Eleanor lying in the hospital bed, looking so small and fragile that Madison's heart nearly stopped. Patricia, the nurse from the front desk, appeared beside her. "She's been more alert today than she has all week. It's like she's been waiting for something." Madison's voice came out as barely a whisper. "What if she doesn't want to see me?" "Honey, she's been talking about daisies non-stop. I think part of her has been hoping you'd come." Patricia gently pushed open the door. 15 minutes. If she gets agitated or asks you to leave, you go immediately. Understood. Madison nodded and stepped into the room that smelled of antiseptic and approaching death. Eleanor's eyes were closed, but they fluttered open at the sound of footsteps. When she saw Madison, her expression cycled through confusion, recognition, and finally something that looked like wonder. "Madison." Eleanor's voice was raspy, weakened by illness and medication. "Are you really here?" "I'm here, Grandma Ellie." Madison moved closer to the bed, her legs shaking. "I brought you daisies." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears as she saw the flowers. "You remembered." "I remember everything," Madison said, pulling a chair close to the bed. "I remember how you used to let me help you in your garden. I remember how you taught me to make chocolate chip cookies, and how you'd always let me eat the dough even though Mom said it would make me sick. I remember how you came to every school play, even the terrible ones where I forgot all my lines." Eleanor reached out with a trembling hand, and Madison took it, shocked by how thin and cold it felt. "I remember how you used to call me your little daisy," Madison continued, tears streaming down her face. "And I remember the last time I saw you, how I said terrible things, Her voice broke. How I threw your love back in your face because I was too proud and stupid and selfish to understand what I had. Eleanor's grip on Madison's hand tightened slightly. Madison, you don't need to. Yes, I do. I need to tell you that I know the truth now. About the diner, about the money, about everything you sacrificed for us. I know that you chose to be my grandmother when you didn't have to be. I know that you loved me like your own child, and I repaid that love by being ashamed of you. Madison leaned forward, desperate to make Eleanor understand. But I'm not ashamed anymore. I worked at your diner today, Grandma. Carol hired me. I served coffee to Frank and learned about Sarah's daughter and met all the people whose lives you touched every day for 12 years. Eleanor's eyes widened slightly. You worked at the diner? 6 hours on my feet, and it was the best day I've had in years. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't taking from people, I was giving to them. I was doing what you tried to teach me, serving others, caring about people whose stories matter even if they don't have money or status or country club memberships. Eleanor tried to sit up, and Madison helped her, adjusting the pillows behind her back. Madison, I need you to know that I forgive you, Eleanor said quietly. I forgave you the moment you walked out of that ballroom, because that's what love does. It forgives even when it hurts. But you wouldn't see me. You went into hospice care and said no family visitors. Eleanor's smile was sad but peaceful. I wasn't punishing you, sweetheart. I was protecting you. I knew that if I let you come and apologize and make amends while I was dying, you might do it out of guilt instead of genuine change. I wanted you to find your own way to who you're supposed to be, not who you think I wanted you to be. Madison felt something crack open in her chest, not breaking, but opening, like a door that had been locked for too long. I don't know if I can ever be good enough to deserve what you gave me. Madison, Eleanor's voice grew stronger, more like the grandmother Madison remembered. You don't have to deserve love. That's the whole point. Love isn't earned, it's given freely, or it isn't love at all. The door opened softly, and Madison turned to see her parents standing in the doorway. Richard and Sophia looked older, humbler, worn down by the events of the past week. Sophia's face was streaked with tears. "Mom," Sophia whispered, stepping into the room. "We've been trying to see you every day. They said you didn't want visitors." Eleanor looked at her son and daughter-in-law, and Madison saw something shift in her expression, a mixture of love and disappointment and hope. "I wasn't ready before," Eleanor said simply. "But I think I am now." Richard moved to the other side of the bed, his usual composure completely gone. "Mom, I'm so sorry. For the financial mess, for letting you carry our burdens, for raising Madison to think that." "Richard," Eleanor interrupted gently, "we all made mistakes. You and Sophia got caught up in trying to give Madison advantages, and you lost sight of what real advantages look like. I got caught up in trying to teach lessons, and I forgot that love sometimes means accepting people exactly where they are." Sophia sank into a chair, covering her face with her hands. "We lost everything, Mom. The house, Richard's job, everything. And worse than that, we almost lost you, and it's our fault." "You haven't lost me," Eleanor said firmly. "I'm right here. And as for the other things, they're just things. Houses can be replaced. Jobs can be found. What matters is that we're here together, finally telling each other the truth." Madison looked around the small hospice room at her family, really looked at them, perhaps for the first time. Her father, No longer the confident businessman, but a man who'd made mistakes and was trying to learn from them. Her mother, stripped of designer clothes and social pretenses, but somehow more beautiful for it. And Eleanor, dying but at peace, surrounded by the people she'd chosen to love despite all their flaws. "Grandma Ellie," Madison said, "I know I can't undo what I said at the party. I can't take back those words or that moment. But I want to spend whatever time you have left showing you who I'm going to become." Eleanor smiled, and for a moment she looked like the strong, vibrant woman who had raised Madison. "Tell me about the diner. Tell me about the people you met." So Madison did. She told Eleanor about Frank the truck driver, about Sarah working 2 jobs for her daughter's education, about the construction crew rebuilding homes after the tornado. She told her about Carol's kindness, about the dignity she'd found in serving others, about the tips she'd earned with her own hands. As Madison spoke, she watched Eleanor's face light up with something that looked like pride, not the shallow pride of accomplishment, but the deep satisfaction of seeing someone you love discover their own worth. "And I want to keep working there," Madison continued. "I want to learn every customer's name, remember their stories, serve them the way you did. I want to earn my education fund by becoming someone worthy of it." Richard cleared his throat. "Madison, you don't have to work at a diner. We'll figure out the money situation." "Dad," Madison interrupted, "I want to work there. Not because I have to, but because it's where I learned what Grandma Ellie was trying to teach me. That every person you meet has value. That service isn't something you do for people beneath you, it's something you do with people who matter." Eleanor reached for Madison's other hand, so that she was holding both of them. "Madison, I have something to tell you. The will that Trevor showed you, it was real, but it wasn't final. I wrote it when I was angry and hurt. But yesterday, after I heard you'd been to the diner, I asked the lawyer to change it back." Madison's eyes widened. "Grandma, your education fund is secure. But more than that, I'm leaving the diner to you. Not the money from it, not the property value, the responsibility. The people who work there, the customers who depend on it, the community it serves. That's your inheritance, if you want it." The magnitude of what Eleanor was offering hit Madison like a tidal wave. Not just money or property, but a legacy of service, a chance to continue what Eleanor had built. "I want it," Madison said without hesitation. "I want all of it. The work, the responsibility, the chance to take care of people the way you did." Eleanor squeezed Madison's hands one more time, then let go and reached for Richard and Sophia. "Come here, all of you." The Harper family gathered around Eleanor's hospital bed, and for the first time in years, maybe ever, they weren't pretending to be anything other than who they really were. They were just a family who had hurt each other and found their way back to love. "I need you all to promise me something," Eleanor said, her voice growing weaker but her words crystal clear. "Promise me that you'll take care of each other. Not with money or status or things that don't matter, but with presence. With honesty. With the kind of love that sees people exactly as they are and chooses them anyway." "We promise," they said in unison, and Madison could feel the weight of that promise settling into her bones. Eleanor looked at Madison one last time. "And you, my little Daisy, promise me you'll remember that the most important things in life can't be bought. They can only be given freely, received gratefully, and shared generously." "I promise, Grandma Ellie. I promise." Family isn't just about blood or obligation. It's about choosing to love someone through their mistakes and celebrating who they become because of them. Eleanor's legacy isn't the money she saved or the property she owned, but the love she chose to give freely even when it wasn't deserved. What do you think makes a family truly strong? Share your thoughts below, because this story shows us that sometimes losing everything is the only way to find what really matters. As the evening settled around them, the Harper family sat together in that small hospice room, holding each other's hands and finally understanding what Eleanor had been trying to teach them all along. Love wasn't about deserving or earning or proving yourself worthy. Love was about showing up, telling the truth, and choosing each other again and again, especially when it was hard. And for the first time in their lives, that's exactly what they were doing. 3 days later, Madison sat beside Eleanor's bed in the pre-dawn darkness, her hand gently holding her grandmother's frail fingers. Eleanor had been sleeping more and more, but she'd insisted Madison continue talking to her, about the diner, about the customers, about the small moments that made up a life of service. "Frank brought his mother in yesterday," Madison whispered to the quiet room. "She's 92 and sharp as a tack. She told me you used to slip extra pie into their takeout orders when his mother was going through chemo 5 years ago. She said you never charged them for it, never made it seem like charity, just acted like it was natural to take care of people." Eleanor's breathing was shallow but steady. The hospice nurses had warned them that the end was close, but Eleanor seemed to be holding on, as if she had something left to give. "I'm starting to understand," Madison continued, "what you meant about love being a choice. Every day at the diner, I get to choose whether to really see people or just serve them, whether to remember their names or forget them when they walk out the door, whether to be present in their lives or just go through the motions." Eleanor's eyes fluttered open, clearer than they'd been in days. "Madison," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm here, Grandma Ellie. The letter, in my purse, for you." Madison looked around the room and found Eleanor's small purse on the bedside table. Inside was another envelope, this one sealed with wax, the old-fashioned way Eleanor had always sealed special letters. "Open it," Eleanor breathed. Madison broke the seal with trembling fingers. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a small, tarnished key. "My precious Madison, if you're reading this, it means I'm ready to let go, and you're ready to truly begin. The key opens a safety deposit box at First National Bank. Inside, you'll find the original deed to the diner, photos of your real grandmother, my dearest friend, and a letter she wrote for you before she died. She wanted you to know how much she loved you, even though you were so small when she passed. But more than that, you'll find something I've been saving for this moment, the truth about why I chose your family. When your real grandmother was dying, she made me promise that I would love you like my own child, but she also made me promise something else, that I would teach you that love isn't about blood or obligation. It's about choosing to see the best in someone and helping them become who they're meant to be. I kept that promise, even when it was hard. Even when you broke my heart. Even when I was breaking. You are the child I never had, chosen not by biology but by love. And today, you proved that love was worth every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every moment I wondered if I was doing right by you. Take care of the diner. Take care of the people. Take care of each other. Most importantly, take care of yourself. You have so much love to give. I saw it today in how you talked about Frank and Sarah and all the others. That's who you really are, Madison. Not the girl who was scared and cruel at your party, but the young woman who learned that serving others is the highest calling of all. I'm so proud of who you've become. All my love, now and always, Grandma Ellie. P.S. Your real grandmother's name was Margaret. She would have loved the woman you're becoming. Madison read the letter through tears that wouldn't stop falling. When she finished, She looked up to find Eleanor watching her with eyes that seemed to hold all the love in the world. "Grandma," Madison whispered, "I love you. Not because you chose to be my family, but because you taught me what family really means. You taught me that love isn't something you fall into, it's something you rise up to meet." Eleanor smiled, and for a moment she looked like she had when Madison was little, strong and vital and full of stories. "Madison," Eleanor said, her voice growing faint, "promise me something." "Anything." "Promise me you'll tell them. Tell Frank and Carol and Sarah and all of them. Tell them they mattered. Tell them that serving them was the greatest honor of my life." "I promise." Eleanor's eyes found Madison's parents, who had been quietly sitting in the corner, giving them this final moment together. "Richard." "Sophia." Eleanor called softly. They came to the bedside, each taking one of Eleanor's hands. "I forgive everything," Eleanor whispered. "We're family. That's what family does." Richard was crying openly now, this strong man reduced to the little boy who had once been Eleanor's son-in-law, then her chosen son. "Mom, I love you. I should have said it more. I should have said it every day." "You're saying it now," Eleanor smiled. "That's what matters." Sophia leaned down and kissed Eleanor's forehead. "Thank you for loving us when we didn't deserve it. Thank you for never giving up on us." "Never," Eleanor breathed. "Never giving up. That's what love means." As the sun began to rise outside the hospice window, Eleanor looked at each of them one more time. This family she had chosen, this family that had chosen her back. "The daisies," she whispered. Madison looked at the bouquet she'd brought, now wilting slightly in their vase. Without hesitation, she took one flower and placed it gently in Eleanor's hands. Eleanor held it close to her heart and closed her eyes. "Thank you," she said so quietly they almost didn't hear it. "Thank you for coming home." Those were Eleanor's last words. As the morning light filled the room, she slipped away peacefully, surrounded by the people she had loved most, holding a daisy and wearing the expression of someone who had completed everything she'd set out to do. The Harper family sat in that quiet room for a long time, holding each other and letting the magnitude of their loss settle around them. But underneath the grief was something else, a foundation of love so strong that even death couldn't shake it. "She did it," Madison said finally. "She saved us all." Richard nodded, wiping his eyes. "She taught us what we couldn't teach ourselves." "What happens now?" Sophia asked. Madison looked at the key in her hand, then at her parents, really looked at them, seeing not the flawed people who had made mistakes, but the family members who had found their way back to truth and love. "Now we live the life she would be proud of," Madison said. "We take care of the diner. We take care of each other. We remember that love isn't something you deserve, it's something you choose to give." Later that morning, Madison stood in the diner wearing her apron and name tag, serving coffee to Frank and breakfast to Sarah and taking care of all the people Eleanor had loved. Carol worked beside her, teaching her the rhythms of the place, the stories of the regulars, the sacred duty of feeding people and listening to their lives. When Frank asked where Eleanor was, Madison told him the truth, that she had died peacefully, surrounded by family, holding a daisy and knowing she was loved. "She wanted me to tell you something," Madison said, refilling his coffee cup with hands that were finally steady. "She wanted you to know that serving you, serving all of you, was the greatest honor of her life. That you mattered to her. That you all mattered." Frank nodded, his weathered face creasing with emotion. "She was something special, that woman. Made everyone feel like family." "She was," Madison agreed. And she taught me that family isn't about blood or money or any of the things I used to think were important. It's about choosing to love people and showing up for them, especially when it's hard. As Madison worked through her shift, she felt Eleanor's presence in every interaction, every smile, every moment of connection with another human being. This was Eleanor's legacy, not the money she'd saved or the property she'd owned, but the love she'd chosen to give freely to everyone she met. That evening, Madison sat with her parents in their small apartment, eating takeout and planning their future. They would rebuild, but differently this time, with honesty instead of pretense, with substance instead of status, with love instead of obligation. Madison would go to college, but she'd also keep working at the diner, learning Eleanor's lessons about service and compassion. Richard would find work that mattered instead of work that impressed. Sophia would discover who she was without designer clothes and country club memberships. They would be a family, not perfect but real. Not wealthy, but rich in the things that actually mattered. As Madison prepared for bed that night, she held Eleanor's final letter and the small key that would unlock the rest of her grandmother's story. Tomorrow, she would learn about Margaret, the grandmother she'd barely known. She would see the photos and read the letter that had been waiting for her all these years. But tonight, she just wanted to remember Eleanor as she'd been in their final moments together, peaceful, proud, and absolutely certain that love was the only thing that mattered. Madison had started this story as a spoiled teenager who was embarrassed by the woman who loved her most. She was ending it as a young woman who understood that being chosen by someone like Eleanor wasn't a burden to hide, it was a gift to treasure. The girl who had once mocked a dying woman's sacrifice had become someone worthy of that sacrifice. And in the end, that transformation was Eleanor's greatest victory of all. Here's what I've learned from Madison and Eleanor's story. The people who love us most aren't always the ones we're related to by blood. Sometimes they're the ones who choose us when they don't have to. Eleanor could have walked away from this family at any point, but she stayed because love is a decision you make every day, not a feeling that happens to you. The most profound lesson here isn't about money or status or even forgiveness. It's about understanding that we become who we're meant to be through serving others, not through being served by them. What's the most important lesson someone has tried to teach you through their love? Share it in the comments below. I'd love to hear about the Eleanors in your lives. Madison Harper had learned the truth her grandmother had been trying to teach her all along. The most important things in life can't be bought, they can't be inherited, and they can't be taken away. They can only be given freely, received gratefully, and shared generously. And that, Eleanor would have said with a smile, was worth more than all the money in the world. Thank you so much for watching this story all the way to the end. If this touched your heart, then you're going to love the next one. It's just as powerful, and even more intriguing than you can imagine. So don't stop here. Check out more videos on my channel and continue the journey. I'll be waiting for you on the other side of that story. See you there.